everyone, and welcome to a new video. Welcome to any new viewers and new subscribers. My name is Marianne, and today is going to be an interesting video because I consider it to be more of a video essay on a particular topic, which is quite new for this channel, and it's my first one, so hopefully I can express my thoughts clearly and concisely. But I just wanted to talk about three stories that I have lately come across that all have to deal with the idea of identity and how each of them tackle identity in different ways. So I have two definitions of identity here, and they're the ones that I'm going to be mainly thinking about when I'm talking about or referring to identity. So we have the distinguishing character or personality of an individual, but then there's also the fact of being who or what a person or thing is. And so, identity has been tackled in several different media, in several different stories, but these three in particular have made me think about the ways they have tackled the idea of identity. So I'll just move on to the first one. So the other by Thomas Tryon you may have heard me talk about in previous videos a while back, but just a brief summary. We're following two twin boys during the course of one summer, and tragic things have already occurred before the summer has gone by. So their father had tragically died in an accident. One of the twins, Holland, was hurt during another accident where he fell into a well, and now their mother is kind of secluded herself in a room. And it's basically following these two boys, Holland and Niles, and they're very different from one another. So Niles is very well-mannered, eager to please, while Holland is quite the opposite. In fact, he has a very malicious streak to him that is very worrying. And we're following these two twins, and we're just seeing the depraved acts that Holland is, committing, and we're seeing how Niles is kind of just, how he's kind of just excused it for a while, but just seeing the gravity of it all, realizing that, Holland needs to stop. And spoilers for the other, by the way, gonna tell it right now, so I'm just gonna leave a timestamp, but yes, spoilers for right now. We find out later that Holland is actually dead, and that he actually died in that aforementioned accident in the well, and that whenever we see Holland in the book, it's actually a creation of Niles. If you've seen the Austrian movie Goodnight Mommy, that's basically the premise, that's basically the story of this book. We have two twins, one of them died, the other cannot cope, and therefore he sort of recreates that twin. And then the adult figure in this book, it's mainly the grandmother, goes along with it, but it leads to disastrous consequences. In the book, it is established that the grandmother has taught the boys this game. And it's basically staring at an object and sort of, whether it's like an animal, it's mainly an animal, but staring at an object and sort of like entering the perspective, or sort of like, the idea of stepping into one's shoes, like you adopt the identity or the perspective of whatever you are looking at. And we find out that Niles has been doing that, playing this game with his dead brother, Holland. And the thing is, the creepy thing about it is that he's very good at sort of copying or assuming Holland's identity. He knew his twin very well, and Holland was a very malicious, depraved, you could say depraved boy. So the book plays the idea of identity being something that you can assume, or identity being sort of like a suit that you can just like walk in, like you can walk in and play around with. And yeah, something that is just malleable, something that is distinct, but in this case, in this story, malleable enough that you can start, playing with it. I find it, very creepy when the mother believes that, she doesn't see anymore Niles, like playing pretend that, his brother's alive. It feels more that Holland has returned from the dead, and is like slowly possessing Niles. And in a way, that is what is happening. The Holland identity is kind of just, it's too strong and it's overpowering. Because if you look back, like there are sort of flashes to the past before the incident, and Holland was, in many ways, had a more dominant personality more than Niles. And Niles has reconstructed Holland to such an accurate degree that that dominant, abrasive Holland personality or identity naturally begins to take over or push over Niles' own identity. You have something that is an identity that has been, was originally a plaything, a role to play as, but has just become, all consuming basically. And we find out another bit of spoilers, we find out that the Holland personality has indeed taken over Niles. Like Niles is no longer there, it's just Holland. So yeah, that's why I find it such a creepy book, but incredibly eerily fascinating. And looking at character, obviously, like this thing, like I said, has been done, like this premise has been done in other media, but nevertheless it is still fascinating. So that's one look at identity and how it is looked at and portrayed in a story. So yeah, the next story I want to mention is Perfect Blue by Satoshi Kon. If you watched my movie collection, you would have definitely saw this and how much I adore this. This is my favorite Satoshi Kon film. But Perfect Blue follows a young woman named Mima who went to Tokyo to become a pop star, but as of lately, she kind of gets out of the game and wants to transition into a career in acting. And this decision doesn't bode well for a lot of people. Mima, she's part of an all-girl pop group, has sort of cultivated this image, the pop idol image. And when she decides to transition into acting, a lot of her fans, particularly one or two, in fact, don't take this kindly. Don't take this kindly at all. And Perfect Blue sort of deals with the idea of identity becoming a possession, becoming the possession of other people in a way. I think, we had the idea, like, if you're a celebrity or if you're just anyone putting, I guess, content out there, you're presenting yourself out in public, or that you're not giving the public 100% you. It's always going to be a filtered version of you. So you're giving a version of yourself out there, a version of your identity out there. And what happens, particularly in this one, this identity or this version of your identity becomes, like the possession of another person. They covet it. They sort of view it as their own. Once Mima starts deviating away from this pop idol image that she has cultivated, the sweet, innocent, pop idol girl, the person, begins to view them as two separate things. The pop idol image is its own separate thing, and then the other person. And so the idea of you're splitting away a public identity and treating it differently from the actual person, and taking that public identity and as your own thing. And if that person who put out the identity in the first place deviates from it, you start feeling attacked, or you start reacting in a way that is like, you're doing something wrong to me, or that sort of thing. And I feel like that happens in real life. The idea of identity becoming sort of outside the control of the original person, becoming the possession of another human being, or that sort of thing. Perfect Blue deals with it. It delivers it in a story that is incredibly poignant, but scary as well. So as I mentioned, please watch Perfect Blue. So the last story I want to tackle that deals with identity in such an interesting way is from this anthology, Shadows of Carcosa. The particular short story I want to talk about is The Jolly Corner by Henry James. So in that story, we're following a man named Spencer Bryden, who has come from Europe. He's actually American, but At a young age, he decided he wanted to travel to Europe, I guess, to follow a more loose bohemian lifestyle. Well, it turns out that many of his relatives have died, and he is being left behind 2 buildings. So like they have become bequeathed to him. He's now the owner of it. So he travels over there, and he begins refurbishing or renovating these houses. And he discovers that he's really good at it. Like when it comes to like business venture and architecture and all that, he's pretty good at it. And he's talking with a friend, and she sort of mentions that, if you hadn't left for Europe and if you had stayed in America, who knows what you could have done? Who knows, you could have been a master of, architecture, one of those big names. And Bryden, begins thinking about this, and then considering like, his, I guess, innate talent for this sort of thing, he starts to agree. And then he begins to start thinking. He begins to become obsessed with this, idea of who he could have become. What if I had stayed in the States? What if I had pursued, architecture and all that? I could have been famous, or, I could have been, a big name. I could have accomplished all of this if I hadn't gone off to Europe. So one of the houses he renovates is like the Jolly Corner. One of it he renovates for like apartment buildings, and then one is a house that he remembers growing up in, and he refers it on the Jolly Corner. And he goes there at night. He like visits there in the middle of the night just to walk around in it. And soon enough, he starts to imagine that someone else is in that house while he's in there, and that someone is him. But it's the him that he would have become if he had stayed in America. So this version of himself that he thinks he would have become if he had just stayed, if he had pursued architecture, if he had, gone into the family business and all of that. And he becomes obsessed with sort of just stalking his alternate self throughout the house. Typically, when we think of identity, it's basically formed from our experiences and our own decisions. But this idea of, you have this alternate idea of an identity that is built upon the experiences that we didn't have, or, the decisions that we didn't make in life. It's ultimately the what if you. Like, what type of person would have I become if I didn't take this course in life, or if I didn't take this path in life, or if I made this decision at this point in my life? What kind of individual would I have ended up as? Would I have been a better person? Would I have, been successful? Would I have been more happy? He becomes obsessed. Spencer Bryden becomes obsessed with this what if person. This identity based off of alternate decisions or experiences sort of like takes on a life of its own. It becomes almost a real entity. And, at the end of the story, I won't say what happens, but it's actually quite heartwarming, in fact. It ends with the affirmation that what he is now, that's what matters, and that, it ends with a sort of contentness with who you are and what has made you at this point already, and not to be obsessed with worrying, what if. So yeah, that story actually ended in a sweet note. So yeah, that was my discussion on sort of identity, and how particularly just the way it was explored in these particular stories, and just how much I found it fascinating and really great conversation starters. I think this is the great thing about media, about books and film. They open up conversations, and yeah, I would recommend all of these stories, all of them. And yeah, hopefully I can do another video like this. I know I was just really in the mood to do this, and it was just a concept that that was like rattling in my head, and I wanted to get it out. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope what I said makes sense, or like it was coherent enough. I have a tendency to just like go off on tangents or whatever, or like repeat or babble. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.